Here we are. It's Wednesday, the 6th of November, and we had record highs in many areas in the Northeast and into the mid Atlantic states, but this is the last day of this particular round. Raphael became a major hurricane this afternoon and hit Western Cuba. The last time that happened was 2002, I think, with Hurricane Michelle in the month of November. Thank you, Anthony Orr. And we've got a winter storm because it's November and there should be at least a winter storm somewhere. And that's up in the southern Rockies. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about what's going on in the east, the never ending pattern, and much more on tonight's Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast, which, if you like, you can show your support by using the affiliate link pinned to the top of the chat board on Amazon. It's very simple. You buy whatever it is you want to buy. Amazon throws us back a little coin. You get your stuff, and it doesn't cost you a dime. And it's an easy way to support the Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast. And after all, as Jane Russell used to say, Joe, support can be beautiful.
Did she ever say that?
I think that was the commercial,
I
because
remember
she
she used to. I remember she used to do a commercial. I think for Playtex.
latex she referred to herself as a full-figured gal.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, that's right. I think that's where support can be beautiful came from. Okay, so here we are, and Frank R on the chat board, Joe, points out that New York City, as measured at the lovely Central Park, got to 80 degrees today. That is only the fifth time that has ever happened in the month of November, and it was a record.
Yes, and it also was a record at the Westchester County Airport, 78 degrees there. And this, Joe, was the fourth record high at Westchester Airport in the last 16 days, including last Friday, which was the warmest day ever recorded at the airport in November, which was, no, not 80, 79. But today was 78, the old record, 74, and that was set back in 2022. That was only 2 years ago.
There was a plethora of 80s today. Portland, Maine, also pointed out by someone on the chat board a little earlier before the show, because they come on early. Mike Waterhouse Bonsai said Portland had its warmest November temperature ever today, Joe, at 79. So I said yesterday that there would be some all-time highs being set somewhere in the Northeast, and got one. So that verified. I'm going to cool down in stair steps, I think, and still in line for maybe a bit of rain late Sunday into Sunday night, early Monday morning. But again, it's when you consider the fact that if you had a normal September and a normal October, you should have had about 6 inches of rain over the 2 month period. And we'll be 10 days through the month of November, which is a little wet weather. So throw in another inch or so on top of that. So you're talking about 7 inches since September should have fallen since September 1st. And many areas have had less than a tenth of an inch in that time frame. Some places haven't had anything in that time frame.
Well, tomorrow the latest drought map from the Climate Prediction Center will be posted, and we'll take a look at it. And already there are many places in the tri-state area that are under a drought situation. Not severe drought yet, but if we keep going like this for even just another week or so, it will become or be categorized as severe. But we'll see what they come up with tomorrow in their updated map, which always comes, is always updated on a Thursday.
All right. So let's get ready to start taking a look at what's going on weather-wise. However, before we get to that, a big hello to everybody on the chat board tonight. And those of you who are not on the chat board but are always lurking in the background somewhere, we bid you adieu as well. Just make sure you subscribe to the Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast if you haven't already, and turn your notifications on so you don't miss us. We're here Sunday through Thursday at 7:35 p.m. and the occasional Friday and Saturday when there's a storm around, if there ever will be a storm around ever again. And I think I covered it all. If you like the show, hit the like button. I don't know if I may have said that twice. Um, but all right, let's do Raphael because it Raphael became a major hurricane today. Before it made landfall on the south coast of Western Cuba. Not many people, you young folk that are watching this may not realize this, but it's only in recent years that we would get are getting weather information from Cuba. For the longest time, Joe, you remember that when they would fly reconnaissance aircraft, if once a storm got within Cuban airspace, they wouldn't be able to do anything. They wouldn't be able to go into the storm. We didn't have any access to radars or anything else.
Well, they didn't want to
Um,
upset. They didn't want to upset Fidel.
Fidel, yeah, I forgot. Maybe it was about was it maybe 10 or so years ago they came to sort of an agreement to share weather information, which is détente, I suppose. But you can see the storm has now moved inland. And it looks like the center is emerging back into the Gulf of Mexico. Now, I think it's got a window here where it might strengthen a little bit. As long as it stays south of 25 north, it may be able to avoid some of the fear that's going on and will be increasing across the northern half of the Gulf of Mexico.
We need
So
maps, Joe.
Oh, I didn't put the maps up? Oh, I
No, you
saw,
did not.
I
No.
saw, I saw, as my daughter would say, I solly. So there's the satellite loop. Um, this is one thing with the Hurricane Center forecast. They got the number. I forgot what number major we're up to. Is either 5 or 6, I think. But as long as it stays south of 25 north, it may hold together for a while.
Oh, was that my cue?
That's your cue. I talked
Oh,
long enough.
oh, okay, yeah, all right, and it's going to be over water for more than just a while. It looks like. In fact, over the next several days, it'll be out over the water, kind of teasing the folks who live along the Gulf Coast. But as it appears now, Joe, as toward the end of its run over the Gulf of Mexico, it's going to start to encounter some unfavorable conditions. And although it was a Category 3, it certainly is going to be weakening some as we progress through the next several days.
So the hurricane model forecasts have changed quite a bit since yesterday. Now the bulk of the models are taking it almost straight west, south of 25 degrees north, uh, right through the forecast period. There's still a few of them that want to try to recurve it once it gets west of 90 degrees west. You can see there's one outlier model that takes, you went from almost all the models taking it into southeast Louisiana now to almost none of the models taking it into southeast Louisiana, and a few of them, and this happens oftentimes in November because of how the upper air sets up, where you get these storm systems, and they want to go into the southwest Gulf. So it's not impossible that you could wind up with something that winds up drifting down there. But the point is, I think that uh, we're not going to. It should not be a. This is not going to be any kind of threat to the U.S. mainland from what we're seeing. And even if it were to make that turn, it would get into that area of shear, which would rip it apart anyway.
It's also getting kind of late in the ball game. I mean, well, what can I tell you? 80 degrees today in most locations here in the Northeast. It's what the sixth day of November, the day after Election Day, and now we're talking about a Category 3 hurricane. So you might say, Joe, that the summer weather pattern has been extended a bit over the course of the last several days here, at least into this 11th month of the year.
Intensity guidance, uh, much slower in the weakening process. A lot of the models still have this as a hurricane at 96 hours, which would take us into early Saturday. And although there are a number of them that weaken it to a tropical storm after 72 and 84 hours, uh, and get it down to a pretty weak tropical storm at that. And there's a few of them actually. A couple of models here want to take it back up to a Category 3. So we'll see. We'll see how it plays. I would tend to favor a gradual, slow, maybe an initial re-intensification, maybe not quite to a Cat 3, but to maybe a high-end Cat 2 again, and then just kind of, laboring along, losing a little bit of strength uh, over a very, stretched out period of time. And again, unless something surprising happens at the last minute, this should not be any kind of major issue. Here's the Hurricane Center forecast. This is as of 7 o'clock. It was at 23.2, 83.2. Top winds 105 miles an hour. The center now emerging into the Gulf of Mexico. And you can see a turn to the west, just kind of wobbling along westward. They keep it as a hurricane through Saturday afternoon, and then they weaken it as a tropical storm as it continues on its westward path. So uh, we'll see what it does. Meanwhile, as far as watches and warnings concerned over the U.S., we actually have flash flood watches up for much of central and southern Georgia, south of Atlanta. The rain is just to my south, and it's gotten almost. It doesn't want to nose its way northward, and some of the flood watches extended to South Carolina. Nothing to worry about here in the western North Carolina mountains, by the way. And you see a good chunk of the state of New Mexico under winter storm warnings. We have winter storm watches and winter storm warnings up for central and northeastern Colorado, and even into southwestern Nebraska and a couple of counties in northwest Kansas. You know, I mentioned, I've said many times when it snows in Seattle, that tells you that the weather in the east is completely unfavorable for snowfall. I think the same applies for New Mexico. When it snows in New Mexico, it also usually means that you're not going to see any cold air in the eastern part of the United States anytime soon.
Well, usually this is people, really don't realize. I mean, this is a pretty big country. I mean, going from west to east, of course, from the Pacific coast to the east coast to 3,000 miles, and it's very difficult to get the same type of weather from coast to coast in terms of temperature, in terms of a specific type of air mass. And you're right, Joe. Usually, when it's warm in the west, it's cold in the east, and vice versa. And that's exactly what we're seeing here. We're seeing cold and all the white stuff occurring out west. But meanwhile, east of the Mississippi, we've got unseasonably warm conditions out there. I mentioned yesterday that in 1950 we had some very warm weather to kick off the month of November, and yet later in the month we had a lollapalooza of a storm which moved up along the Appalachian Trail and brought tremendous winds, heavy rains here, and just to the west of the storm track, tremendous snows over portions of Pennsylvania and Western Virginia, West Virginia, 20, 30 inches of snow. You wouldn't have thought that would be possible considering how balmy the month had started. That big storm occurred around the 24th or 25th of November. So I'm not saying that's going to happen this year, but it's still a possibility that we may flip and go to a different type of weather pattern before the end of the month. We'll see.
The digital forecast has a foot of snow forecast for Denver, and they've got some big amounts. We're talking 30 inches plus at some of the mountains in north central New Mexico, north of Santa Fe, and into south central Colorado. So pretty impressive. Even areas further south down near Albuquerque, uh, possibly seeing. They got a 6-inch print for Albuquerque here on the digital forecast map. So this is a pretty solid snow event for them. Lighter snows extend up into Wyoming and Montana, coating to an inch or coating to a few inches in some places. So the main energy is going pretty far to the south, even some snow back in Utah and northeastern Arizona. And you can take a look at the satellite loop tonight. You see Raphael coming off the coast of Cuba. Got some clouds in parts of the southeast, and also some lightning strikes going on in southern Georgia back into South Carolina, or at least there were earlier. And a weather front is moving to the north through the northeast, and all that's left of that front. Yeah, I looked at the radar this morning, and it was loaded with rain in western New York, western PA, down into Ohio and Indiana. And when we check out the radar tonight, it's all gone.
It's
It's
gone.
just gone. I mean, there was a solid wall of rain, and not just light stuff either. Gone. That is, this is. I've been saying dry begets dry, and when you're in a pattern like this, it doesn't want to rain. So whenever anything even remotely looks like it's going to come in and bring in some rain, you have to have it in the back of your mind that it could all fall apart and go away. And that's exactly what's happened here.
And yeah, if you had looked at the radar late last night, and you say, "Oh, look at that! That's a nice line of precipitation," and you know might even have tracked it using the Allen Casper Pittsburgh rule, where it rains in Pittsburgh and 8 hours later it's here. But as you pointed out, Joe, as that line headed eastward, it just completely fell apart. We did have cloud cover, the debris field, if you will, of the residual shower activity, but again, no significant precipitation, nothing on the docket for tonight, tomorrow, right on through into the upcoming weekend, except maybe by later Sunday, a warm front approaching may bring us a few rain showers and maybe some showers with a cold front moving through early on Veterans Day Monday. That's about the best that we can hope for right now in terms of any significant, quote unquote, significant precipitation.
We've got some rain east of Atlanta along I-85 going into South Carolina. We have some heavy rain in southeast Georgia down to the Florida state line, and that extends into the interior of South Carolina up to about Columbia. And that's about it. Not much going on around in Florida. The Keys, the westernmost Keys, are getting some of the rain bands now of Raphael, and you can actually, if you look close enough, you can see the hook there that's just off the northwest coast of Cuba as the center moves back out over the open waters. And here we've got snow in New Mexico. All of this is snow back up through Colorado into northwest Kansas and parts of southwest Nebraska. All of that with the next weather system that is going to eventually come out with another low in the southern and central plains, and that brings through the magical cold front for later Sunday, where maybe, just maybe, we might see some rain. Otherwise, the west is quiet. The northern plains, the Great Lakes, Ohio Valley, much of the Gulf states, and back to Texas, all showing some very, very quiet weather. Um, Severe weather is really confined to extreme southwest Florida, where we have a marginal to slight risk of severe weather being indicated there. And that's also going to come with a tornado risk of 2%, 5% tornado risk out in the Keys. Then as we go on to day two, Thursday into Friday, marginal to slight risk in central Texas with a 2% tornado risk there. And as we move on to day three, a marginal risk continues in central Texas. So that covers the land of severe weather. And as far as rainfall goes, uh, not even a quarter of an inch now, Joe. They've got that darker green is a tenth to a quarter from Maine to North Carolina. So that wets the ground, maybe leaves a couple of puddles, and not much more.
Puddles or poodles?
Well, maybe, perhaps both.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, the tropical system staying to the south rather than coming into the Gulf Coast it makes a huge difference because earlier models were trying to pull that up and get the moisture involved with this next weather system coming out of the southern plains. Uh, That's not going to happen. So without that tropical moisture, you've got nothing. You've got very little to work with. Just whatever energy that you can get with the upper air shortwave when it goes by. That's not going to produce very much. It all gets left back west of the Appalachians anyway, and that's where you have an inch and a half plus through Kentucky in a kind of narrowish band that runs down the Mississippi River into Arkansas and cuts Louisiana on a diagonal. You can see heavier rains heavier precipitation, I should say, up to several inches of liquid throughout much of West Texas and western Oklahoma. And then, of course, what you see in New Mexico and southeast Colorado is rather sizable in terms of melted liquid. And that's That's going to be mostly in the form of some heavy snow there, and heavy precip continues in the Pacific Northwest, several to many inches from Northwest California up the coast of Washington to British Columbia and beyond. So I guess maybe I'll just take a look at the upper air so we can get a feel for what's happening and what's not going to happen. And of course, we've been talking about this sort of persistent ridging pattern in the east that kind of ebbs and flows. Occasionally, you get a short wave that comes down from Canada to kind of squash it down. Then, when after it goes out, it pops back up, and that's what's going to happen this weekend. Although it's not going to pop up enough to take temperatures back up into the 70s to around 80. So that's one difference. The upper low that you see here in over New Mexico, I'm just kind of looking at this. It's a really vigorous upper low that's dropping down into Arizona and going into New Mexico. That's going to nail them with a lot of snow. I mean, no question. And then that lifts up to the northeast. It sort of holds together, or at least holds together enough when it gets into the eastern lakes and then goes out. And then the ridge pops back up again the middle part of next week with deep short wave that moves into the plains, that lifts up into the Great Lakes. Maybe it brings some energy late next week to the northeast. So that actually maybe that might be enough to produce a decent rainfall here, say next Thursday. And then after that finally wraps up, another deep trough in the west gets ejected east, another deep trough in the west that follows that. I mean, it's kind of getting to be a little bit more of an active pattern with more vigorous systems that are coming into the west and moving across. So the southeast ridge looks like it tends to get suppressed a bit more. So that might be one important change. The other one, Joe, is that there is a little bit of blockiness starting to form up in the Davis Strait to Greenland. So that might help to displace some cold air southward eventually. But it looks like the real cold air at the moment is going to be going down into the western half of the United States.
In fact, the Climate Prediction Center has I would say three-quarters of the country, both on their 6 to 10 and 8 to 14-day outlooks, above normal. The only place that it's below normal would be out in the far west. I'm talking about, let's say, west of the Continental Divide. So if
Right.
you want cooler temperatures or chilly temperatures or cold temperatures, that's the place to go, out in the far western states. Otherwise, most everybody from the Rockies on east are going to be probably at or above seasonal normals for the next 1 or 2 weeks.
So our front comes through. We'll have some sunshine tomorrow, I think, but it still may get back into the 70s.
Oh yeah,
Friday, yeah,
I mean, temperatures tomorrow in the lower Hudson Valley said with a degree or two of 71. And in a normal year, not a, what I mean by that is if we had a year where we were going through, regular seasonable conditions, and I would have suddenly say to you on the 7th of November, it's going to be 71 tomorrow, you'd say, oh my God, it's going to be a heat wave tomorrow. But
yeah.
71 actually is going to be a cool down of sorts compared to recent days around here. So it's still going to be a rather mild day. And then still above normal, but even cooler weather, it looks like, for Friday. And finally, at least for a day, it looks like Saturday will be more seasonal with temperatures in the upper and middle 50s.
Right. And then, of course, the high goes out. We've got this low, and you can see the snow on the GFS tonight in Colorado down into New Mexico, and that actually continues right into early Friday before finally you get the surface low to lift out of there and move out of Kansas and then head for the Great Lakes. Uh, the GFS on this run wants to take Raphael westward and then turn it northward uh, as a weakening tropical storm into the northeast Gulf, but it just kind of leaves it down there. It never really gets involved with the system to the north of it. So we get this chance for rain here coming Sunday afternoon and Sunday night. By Monday morning, most of it, if not all of it, is gone. Then we go dry for a couple of days. Uh, Cool, but still maybe a little above average. Big high goes out to the east, well off into Atlantic Canada. And then we've got this deep short wave that comes into the west over the early next week with rain and snow in the northern Rockies, and then a low that jumps up into the western lakes and intensifies. You can see it there. It's a pretty wrapped up low there in lakes over Lake Superior with snow in northern Minnesota and northern Wisconsin. So the occluded front that remains and hangs back. GFS gets a little bullish here with rainfall for next Thursday, but we'll see if that's real. And then after that goes out, we have a little shot of cold air, you know, maybe genuinely cold air for a day or two going into next weekend. Now we're at the weekend of the 17th and 18th. And then, of course, the next ridge pops up, and then here comes another low with another cold front that doesn't have much with that, and on it goes. So, uh, if winter weather lovers here in the Northeast and Northern Mid Atlantic states, and also in Eastern Canada. There's very little snow cover, Joe, in Eastern Canada. Now we've had years where there's been a lot of snow cover and hasn't made a difference anyway as far as snowfalls in the Northeast. But this warm pattern is just keeping things very bare, even in places that normally should get at least some snow during the month of November.
Well, it's not happening, at least not in the immediate future.
Yeah,
I
not
said
any.
maybe things will flip later in the month or toward the end of the month. Who knows?
Well, the GFS on this run, day 16, is the last day is November 22nd. And if you look at this is the 2 week snowfall forecast from the GFS model. Uh, and now, obviously, take it with a grain of salt. But you got all your big snows are in the west. The Rockies, on up toward the Sierra Nevadas and parts of the Cascades, and then you see some big snow amounts in central and western Canada away from the U.S. border. You got to go inland, you got to go far enough north to get into all of that. And and in the east, some pickup of snow late in the period in eastern Canada. You could see a little bit starting at around late this weekend. This weekend, I don't know how much of it winds up staying on the ground though, because the warmer air is getting pretty far north. But there is going to be at least some snow eventually in those spots up in eastern Canada. But I don't know. Again, it's not enough, and there's no real sign of any real uh, important pattern change anytime soon.
I don't
So,
understand this comment by Mr. Reuben Fairchild on the chat board.
and this is breaking news.
That's not breaking news. I think it's just the winter weather weenies have been constantly correct, and yet you guys, I guess you guys are you and me, constantly mock them every year.
What do you mean they've been
They always,
constantly correct? What
I
is he?
mean,
What are you
it,
talking about? What's he talking
I don't
about?
know what they're talking. I don't know what he's talking about. Constantly correct.
Well,
Correct about what?
right. Those same weather weenies, by the way, have been putting up European weekly snow maps since early October. Okay. And none of that is, and there's been a few of them that have shown snowfalls in this area, and none of that's right. So what do you say? They always get
He
it
said,
right with winter. Oh, you mean when they say winter is over and we guys always buy? Yeah, because it's still either way, it's still stupid to say winter's over.
well, I mean, like
I
case in
say it.
point,
I say it to bust their chops.
case in point, you want to talk about that this past winter, for God's sake. Look at what happened across portions of New England during the last 2 weeks of March and the first week of April. They got bombed with snow. It was like the whole winter's worth of snow had suddenly hit over a span of like 2.5 weeks in late. In fact, that was one of my concerns when I was traveling up to see the solar eclipse. I said to the folks who were with me, I said, now you have to understand, we may not be able to get to where we're going because they just had like 25 inches of snow. That was up near Plattsburgh or whatever in northern New York State. So, as Yogi said, it ain't over till it's over. And
No,
this year, it really wasn't over until April.
and the only reason they say winter is over is because they're reacting like when a 5-year-old can't get his ice cream fast enough. They throw temper tantrums. And me being a 65-year-old grandfather, I don't tolerate that crap. So, but that again, um, that's me. Um, and Tom Contino, a prominent Twitter meteorologist, I guess we're not going to name drop, is talking about a major cold shot mid-December rivaling 1985. Okay, so
I don't even remember
I don't know.
1985. What happened in 1985?
I have no idea. I have absolutely no idea.
Ken Muzillo says
Once
Nick Red.
upon a time, I could have. By the way, once upon a time, I could have told you what happened to that in 19. No, I was in New Orleans anyway in 1985, so no, I wouldn't remember. So anyway, um, I know we have a Briller Jeopardy, but you know something? I am really tired. I did not sleep well last night. I was watching election coverage till after 11 o'clock, and then I went to bed, and I had a trouble falling asleep. I fell asleep. I woke up at. You ever have one of those nights where you fall asleep and you wake up and you think you've slept the whole night and you look at the clock and it's like an hour has passed by. That was me last night. I woke up at 1:30, got back up and watched an hour of election coverage, and I took two Tylenol, which I never do. But what I do, that usually helps me to get back to sleep, which it actually did. I went back to bed and I knocked out till about 5:30, 6 o'clock this morning. So
The
I
only thing
am
I,
I'm kind of tired.
the only thing that I noticed, and so did Renata, was that for election coverage on CBS, Nora O'Donnell was wearing this beautiful blue outfit,
Okay, you're going
uh,
down the fashion road.
royal blue. And now tonight, upon reporting upon the election results, she switched over and changed to a bright red. So I don't know if this has anything to do with I don't know if it has anything to do with the way the outcome was or what she was hoping for last night or whatever, but that was the only thing that really stood out to me, aside from watching all the reds and blues on the map of the United States last night.
Tom, I'm going to tell you who I voted for because and this is going to anger everybody, and so this way, it's very equal. I didn't vote for I didn't vote for either of the major candidates. Okay, so there you
Ho
go.
ho! He's hiding behind the
That
stove. See?
stove, is he? By the way, I sent you looked at that B Benaderet uh, cartoon with the husband and the wife, and all the things she had to do during the day. I have to tell you that is actually one of my favorite cartoons, particularly because of how the characters are drawn, and then some of the things that they did during the cartoon, where she goes up to the counter to get a milkshake, and she's got all the packages, and she has to carve out like a hole for herself so she could see where she's walking. And the guy gives her the hose with the milk, brings out this
Yes, with the
giant milkshake
milkshake.
with the hose.
Yeah.
There's a lot
Yep.
of little touches in there in that cartoon that I particularly like. So anyway, um, so that's it. Okay, election's over. Everybody's time to move on. Take a deep breath, and we'll see you. Well, I'm gonna hold Briller Jeopardy up till tomorrow when I'm a little bit more awake. So everybody, have a nice night, and we'll see you Thursday.
See you tomorrow night, folks. What do you have to say, Bugs? Yeah, we'll see you tomorrow night, guys.
Bye bye.